So we're going to cover a lot of stuff today, Jamesy. Listeners, we're going to go from, James arriving in the U.S. from England, making the transition to college and professional soccer, his experience as a captain, as a coach, and some of the values that are really important for him that I think we can all learn from as parents, players, coaches. But I want to start off with just the weather in East Tennessee because I'm sure it's nothing like what you experienced for most of your life. I think we are in our either our first or second fall where it was like 70 degrees for a couple of days and now it's back to the high 90s. Everyone has allergies, everyone's falling apart. I can't stop crying, not even on purpose. So, how are you experiencing the weather right now in Knoxville, Jamesy?
Um, yeah, I'm definitely ready for it to cool down. We've been training in like 85, 90 degrees of heat for what feels like months now. So I'm ready for it to cool down. And my missus is ready for it to cool down as well. She absolutely loves fall. She loves a little pumpkin spice latte. So she's ready to start having those in the 60, 70 degree weather. So yeah, I'm ready to see the back of the sunshine and I want some overcast evenings, that's for sure.
So I know you grew up in a smaller town outside of London, and that's where you spent most of your life. And unlike the soccer season here in the U.S., which is really brutal, you're playing in 90 plus degree heat through the summer. Uh, we're getting close to playoff time here, but in England, we're just entering, the start of the Premier League season. We're only a couple of weeks in. What would life be like for you right now, middle of September, if you were still back home?
Well, we definitely have the raincoats out. This is like prime rain time. Um, and I'd still be talking. Obviously, it's early in the Premier League season, so me and my dad would be talking about how it's going to be Tottenham's year this year. We've got to win a trophy. We haven't started too hot in the Prem, but hopefully we'll find a way. This is going to be the year under Big Ange, I think. So for me, it looked like obviously I'd still be playing back home, and I came through the lower leagues in England, and this is actually a really important time of the season because it's FA Cup time, right? Which is one of the oldest football cup competitions in the world. And it's really important in England because every team in England plays in the FA Cup, every men's team. And how you do that is you have to start right at the start of the season so that all of the little teams can play and knock each other out. And then you get the big teams that get added in. So I'm sure at the level I was playing at back home, we'd have an FA Cup game this week. And then if you get through that, the club gets a little bit of money. And then you get through to the next round. And obviously you want to try and eventually play a professional team. And who knows, hopefully go on a run and play a really recognised team. So that's probably what it would look like for me if I was back home right now.
So for a long time, I've been writing about soccer in Knoxville for over a decade. I've been in Knoxville for 13 years now. I've been playing here. Some of the people on this call, I've coached under, coached with, played against. And until One Knoxville showed up, we really didn't have a professional soccer team, something that brought us all together. We had lots of youth clubs, lots of different iterations of amateur clubs. You're from outside of London, from a big football city. So, what was your family and community like growing up? Did you grow up in a family of football lovers? You already mentioned your dad and you were both Spurs fans. What was it like growing up for you?
Yeah, so I'm from kind of a suburb of London, you'd call it. I'm about 40 minutes outside the city. I'm in a town called Woking. And it's a very nice place, very safe place, rolling hills and all that. And it's actually not a huge football town because we don't have like a massive club close to us. Our local club is Woking FC. Go on the Cardinals. And we play in, I think it's the fifth tier of England now. So we're in the conference and we kind of bounce between the fifth and the sixth tier, the conference and the conference south. So it's not a huge football town. The closest big team to us would either be Reading, which some teams know. Some people might know. They've kind of bounced in the Prem. And other than that, it's probably either Chelsea or Fulham, which would be about 30 minutes away, which is, quite a way away in England. So we're not a huge football town. My family isn't a massive football family either. My brother and sister, they could take it or leave it. They're not worried about it. My mum likes to refer to herself as a soccer mum now that I'm out here, which is quite funny. But, she always used to turn up on the Sunday and watch me play. But my biggest influence was my dad. Now, my dad's from North London, which, people may not know, but that's where Tottenham and Arsenal is. And a lot of families there are divided, and his family is the same. He's one of 6. 3 of them were Tottenham and 3 of them were Arsenal. So I could have been on the red side. I could have been on the bad side of North London. Luckily, I fell on the lily white side. But it was very much my dad's influence that got me into football. So that's kind of what my community is like back home. But football is a huge part of our culture. So all of my friends had teams. We would always talk about football in class, at lunch. We were playing football in the evenings. So it's been a huge part of my life. And although we're not a massive football community where I'm from, it's still huge. It's a huge part of the culture in England.
And I think a lot of us have read about, experienced on our own here in the U.S. The culture of soccer being quite different than it is in Europe and South America, in the U.K., Africa, other parts of the world, from just the ability to play all the time, the communities to play in, to the structure of youth soccer. So, what was your introduction into the game and your experience like as a youth footballer? Here, we've got One Knoxville, we've got the academy. You can go, and my little girl, she's a monster, so she plays with the monsters with the 4-year-olds. What was it like for you in England?
So my football journey or my soccer journey started as most people's will in England, which is my dad got me into it. He took me down the park with some of my mates at about 6 or 7. We started practicing once a week. And then we started playing for our local club, which was Knaphill Wanderers. So I played for Knaphill. My dad was the coach. All of the coaches are volunteers. They're all dads. The directors and the people that run the club, the board of the clubs are all volunteers. Like, there's no money. You just kind of pay. You call it boot fees, which is basically you pay your money for the field rental. And that's kind of how it started. And then you just play for your local team. And, I was probably in a league of about 10 to 15 teams. And the furthest I ever traveled was 30 minutes. That was it. If we had a 30-minute game away on a Sunday morning, that was like, that's a big trip for us. We had to convoy together. All of the families would drive behind each other. So very different to how things look out here. But, that, like I say, it goes back to the culture of the football, and that's how it was. And I was brought up through that. I trained once a week. I played one game on a Sunday. We don't have tournaments. Everything is built up for that one game. So it's kind of the pinnacle of your week. And you play on a Sunday morning, and then you do it again the next week. So, and then as you get older, people or your friends start getting picked up for academies, whether they're big academies or smaller academies. And then they'll start to play for the academy as well as your Sunday league team. Now, I was never a lad that was picked up for that. So I was only playing Sunday. I was only playing Sunday league with my boys. But, the better players in the community and the county, you start to hear, he's playing for Chelsea, he's playing for the Fulham Academy, and bits and pieces like that. And then it kind of all grows from there. So, when you get to, let's say, between about 12 and 15, if you're in academy football, you can actually get a day release, which is you get a day off of school to go to your academy and train. So I grew up with 2 lads. One played for Chelsea. The other one played for Southampton. They were never there on a Wednesday at school because Chelsea and Southampton could talk to the school and say, look, we want so-and-so to come here and train with us for the day. And they would do some education as well. So that's kind of how the academy system looks like in England. And also these academy systems, everything's funded for by the clubs. So you're not really paying any money either. So you don't pay for your Sunday league. You pay a little bit of boot money. It's not a lot, a couple of pounds a week. And if you get to the academy football, you also don't you don't pay. Now, there is this kind of middle section, which are called foundations, or they're called Centre of Excellences, where you can pay to get an opportunity to play for an academy. So Chelsea coaches will come once a week to a place. You can pay your money to get trained by Chelsea coaches and hopefully get exposure that way. But that's probably the biggest difference I see in the model that I grew up in and the model is here. It's very much pay to play. That's how things have been set up and that's how things have always been run. Whereas where I'm from, I think largely because of the access and because the amount of people and kiddos that want to play, you didn't need to pay to play for anything because you had teams, you had coaches that understand the game. Dads really understand it. They'll volunteer their time and stuff like that. So I think there's a bit of a gap between where the US is and where the UK is, obviously. But I start to see the game moving in that direction, and I know that One Knoxville eventually want to have a model that is like that. So that's kind of what my football looked like growing up.
Yeah, and there's so many intricacies to why it's different in England and the UK, why
Yeah.
it's different in the US, and we can get into that another time. We're not going to bore you with that, but I always mention an interview that I listened to with Maxi Rodriguez, an Argentinian. Many of you who know me know I'm Argentinian, and he formerly played for Liverpool in the Premier League, but he was giving an interview in for a documentary, and he talked about how he loved playing football as a boy. He also played in like a Sunday league team. But then it came time when he like needed to be serious, and it was time to sit down and be like, okay, Maxi, you're going to be a professional footballer, and that happened when he was 8 years old, because that's how young it has to happen in Argentina if you're going to get set on that path, right? So as you were mentioning, one of the cool opportunities here in the US is that we get to play football for a really long time, where if you're trying to play competitive in other countries, they may say there's no space for you here. So on that topic, at what point did you, one, realize you wanted to be a professional, and two, realize you probably had to take a different route to that dream than going through the academy system in England?
So for me, like playing professionally was almost like a pipe dream, right? It was like I'd watch Spurs on the TV, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, imagine playing there. That would be the dream. Like if someone say, Jamesy, what do you want to do with your life? Oh, I want to play there. If money wasn't a thing, if talent wasn't a thing, that's what I'd want to do. But it was never like a realistic, tangible, graspable thing. I remember I was chatting to my dad and it sticks out in my head when I was about 12 years old, and I was talking about it, and he laughed at me. He said, you talk a good game, but you realize you're probably not going to be a professional, James. And I was like, yeah, like I realize that and I understand that. I know, but it'd be pretty cool, So it was never a thing for me. And even coming to the US, I wasn't like, I play with some lads now that came to the US because it was a different route to get to the professional game. I came to the US purely for my education. And the first conversation I ever had about the professional game was with Coach Mark at Young Harris when I went there. And he was talking about, if you want to be a pro, we've got lads that are on this path, and they're going to do this. And if you wait a couple of years, you can get on that path. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? Like professional football? Like as in get paid to play the game? And he was like, yeah, like this is a realistic thing out here. And that's when, the wheels started to turn, and it was like, wow, okay, this could be a viable option if I really commit myself and I start to learn from these lads that I'm around, because I was in and around some real talent and some really good players. If I can learn as much as I possibly can from them, then I could have a shot at this, And obviously, looking back now, I'm very fortunate that it's worked out that way for sure, and I realize how lucky I am. But back home, it wasn't even a dream for me because it was so far away. And I was literally playing like amateur football and 6-a-side with my mates. And then all of a sudden I go to the US, have a couple of good years, and I'm a sponge and I take everything in. And all of a sudden I start getting these opportunities, and it's been kind of it was almost like a snowball effect. It started at Young Harris and then it just kept going and going. And I talk about football being very much a game of right place, right time. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right people that could help facilitate me and help me get to where I wanted to get to, which fortunately for me is Knoxville, Tennessee.
So you've also told me a really great story before of specifically how you got to the US. And I think it involved you staying up late at night, Googling colleges and sending out emails to coaches and letting them know, hey, I'm in England. I want to come to the States. Can you re recite that story for us of how you got here?
Yeah. So at the time I realized I wanted to come over here. It's not common knowledge, the college system in the US, in the UK. Like people don't understand it, and they see they see the Vols play, maybe some highlights, and they're like, "What? 90,000 people watching college sports? What is that?" And it's kind of this, crazy different world. So when I was coming over, it was I didn't even understand it. So I had to get with like an agency that you sign up for, and you pay quite a bit of money for them to help you get opportunity and exposure over here. So anyway, I looked into it and I did that. I paid my money that I'd earned, and they were getting me offers, but they were getting me offers from schools in places that I didn't really want to go to, that were maybe on the West Coast or in the Midwest, which is further away from England. I wanted to be on the East Coast because it was closer to home. I say closer, but the difference between an 8-hour flight and a 12, 14-hour flight can be quite great for an 18-year-old. So they were getting me offers and they were getting me schools, but I didn't like what I was getting, and I was starting to get a bit frustrated. So there was one night where I just said, you know what, I'm going to start doing this on my own. And naively, I start emailing coaches and schools, massive schools that I had no right in talking to, like UNC, Clemson, all of these big boys. But in there as well were smaller schools that were geographically where I wanted to be. So Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, places in the South. That's where I knew I wanted to be. Anyway, I fire out a load of these emails, maybe 100 emails, and I must have got about 3 replies, right? And in this email, I remember it so vividly, I put 3 questions. I introduced myself, put a bit of footage, and I put 3 questions. What they were, I don't remember, but it was 1, 2, 3. And I get a few replies, we haven't got any money, this or that. And I remember Coach Mark from Young Harris replied to my email, and he said, 1, bang, 2, bang, 3, bang. And he answered my questions precisely. And I was like, wow, he's the only person that's done that. Anyway, we then start getting chatting. We then start to kind of facilitate how we can make it happen. He was like, look, Jamesy, we can't offer you any athletic money. I was like, look, I've got my academics. I've been working really hard. Have you got any academic scholarship? And he was like, we can maybe chat to the school. The school ends up getting me a little bit of academic money. And from there, it became feasible that I could make it happen. So it's funny because I was actually an athletic walk-on. Like that was my first chance in the US. And then, luckily I made the right decision to go to Young Harris, because without that, I wouldn't have been here. So yeah, it was very much a graft and a grind to get out here. And that was at 18, 19, but I'm definitely grateful that I took the plunge, and luckily we made it happen.
So at 18, 19 years old, you are in a different galaxy than professional football, right? Couldn't be farther away. And then
Miles away.
you get this opportunity to come to the States, play for former One Knoxville head coach Mark McKeever at Young Harris. And then from there, you have Young Harris, you go to New Hampshire and play Division I football. You play for the Des Moines Menace in USL League Two and win a national championship. And then you show up here in Knoxville as the club's first signing. I think I met you your first time in Knoxville with Mark McKeever. How does that happen? How do you go from 18 years old, I just want to go to America and study, football's probably not going to happen for me, to then, by the time you're 23, 20, I think 23, right? 23, 24, you're like, I'm right there at the doorstep of playing soccer for a couple of years professionally.
Yeah, so Young Harris was fantastic for me because it was the perfect college for me. It was a college of like 800 to 1,000 students in the mountains of North Georgia. There was no trouble to be had, which was probably good for me. So it really meant that I could focus on my football and I could grow under a good coach, and in with a good set of lads that all wanted to get better. And I knew going into it that I wanted to get my master's degree, and I obviously understood that I could get 4 years at college. So I said to myself, if I smash out my credits the first 3 years, I can play somewhere else for a master's degree, and maybe get some scholarship somewhere, and I can get my master's degree within 3.5, 4 years. So I started rifling out my credits, and then I heard about summer ball. So like it was the PDL at the time, and now it's the USL2. And I couldn't really afford to get home for the summer, so I was like, right, I can go and play for a team. I can do some summer classes. They'll pay for my housing, and I get to play football, and I get to keep playing and get to keep getting better. So anyway, I played for a few summer teams while I was at Young Harris. I played a summer in Peachtree City in Atlanta. Lovely place. They all drive golf carts there. It's really funny. I played one summer in West Palm Beach, which is just a ridiculous place. Beautiful, but, crazy. And then after I'd graduated from Young Harris, because I didn't play for Mark anymore, I was graduated, I could then play for him in the summers. Because you can't play for your college coach at USL2. And he said, Jamesy, do you want to come and play for me in the summer? And we'll start to look at getting you a master's degree somewhere. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And he ended up going from Mississippi Bria to the Des Moines Menace, who are like a powerhouse in the USL2. And he took me with him, and I was really unsure because I wasn't sure I was going to play because of the level of the team. And there was like these ACC players there, and I was obviously a small D2 lad. And anyway, Coach McKeever ended up giving me the minutes, and I ended up having a really good summer. Again, I was learning from lads that were way above my level, technically, maturity level, off the field, on the field. So I was able to learn from them. Then I went to New Hampshire, which is a Division I school. And we ended up getting in the top 15 in the country. We won a conference championship. We won a conference regular season. So again, I was able to learn through that experience. I was voted as a captain by the boys, which I was really grateful for. Then I went back to Des Moines as well to establish myself even more. And then from there, I was done with college, right? So now it was a time, it was like, right, Jamesy, you've got to stop playing summer ball and you've got to try and get into the professional game. And I had a few trials. I chatted to a few clubs. Honestly, I chatted to most of the clubs in USL League One, and just no one was biting on me. I was international at the time, which there's international rules in our league which make it difficult through visas. There was a couple of trials where I didn't play my best football. There was a few conversations where it was like, yeah, we've got this other guy, but if it doesn't work, we'll get in contact with you. And that kind of went on for about probably 2 years. And then fortunately for me, the gaffer ended up coming to Knoxville, and he got the job here in the summer and then went into the pros. And obviously I'd played for him for so long that I was like, yeah, I definitely want to play for you. So I played for him here in the summer. I was a captain for the USL2 team. And then fortunately the club went into the pros. And I was able to be part of that crew that we brought from the amateur side into the professional game. And again, it goes back to I was in the right place at the right time with the right people. So that's kind of my story in America of how I got to Knoxville.
And from the moment you arrived in Knoxville and captained the USL2 team, which made it to the equivalent of the national semifinals or national quarterfinals,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get signed USL League One, you're a professional. What has being a professional and playing for One Knoxville meant for you when you consider that you had reached out to other clubs and you had been rejected before, told, hey, it's not going to work. What does that tell you either about yourself or about, the opportunities that you've received being here and through your relationships with Coach Mark McKeever and One Knox.
Yeah, so I think anyone that knows me knows how much this club means to me. And if you've ever seen me coaching, you probably see the energy that I have on the sidelines because the badge is really important to me. I think most pros have an affinity with the club that they start at that give them that first opportunity, and the coach that gives you that first opportunity as well. Um, and having faced the rejection that I did, that just makes that affinity even stronger with, not only the club and the youth club, but the city as well, because this is the place I'll remember for the rest of my life. Wherever I end up and wherever me and my family are, this will be the place that gave me the chance to live my dream. So it really means a lot to me. I also resonate with the city a lot. It's very diverse, it's up and coming, it's progressive, it's quite industrious as well in places, which I think are traits that make up my personality and my character. So it just feels like a really good fit. And also my wife and the dog and the cat, they love it here as well. So that makes it a little bit sweeter too. So hopefully I'll have a few more years in Knoxville for sure, but it definitely means a lot to me.
Yeah. So I'm sure there are many kids on the call who dream of playing pro soccer. Probably many parents, many moms and dads who dreamed of it. I know I certainly dreamed of it, but I was unwilling to let go of, like, the Twinkies and the Hungry Man meals and all that stuff. I didn't want to do the conditioning part of it. Um, if you were to think of some of the qualities that were really important for you uh, playing at the college level and at the professional level, what are those qualities, and what's that balance between, like, physically being, big and strong, or technically having the right footballing ability, being determined, being tough? So, what are those qualities, and how do you balance them out?
So, I think any professional is well rounded, right? They don't neglect parts of their game, but they certainly lean into their strengths, right? And in terms of that, I knew I had to lean into my strengths. So there's a quote by a guy called Bill Shankly, who's a old Scottish manager, managed Liverpool, really famous. And his quote was that a football team is like a piano, right? You need 8 players to carry it and 3 to play it. Now, I'm very much a piano carrier, right? And I realize that. I'm very much a bread and butter footballer, someone that wants to try and do the right things all the time. I don't really see the game as like a beautiful game. I see it as a game of hard work, a game of overcoming mistakes together, not only on your own, but with your teammates as well, and pushing forward to allow yourself to get results. That's the way that I see the game. Um, so I lent into my strengths, which is my drive, my work ethic, my willingness to win. And it goes to a mantra that I try and live by, which is find a way, right? Find a way. And I love that phrase because it can speak to anyone in any situation. You're at the top and you want to keep being at the top, find a way. You're really struggling and you feel like everything's on top of you, find a way to get out of it, find a way to keep getting better, find a way to learn, So I think having that mindset of constantly trying to find a way is probably what's led me to get to where I am. And I think in terms of, okay, kiddos, how do we get into the professional game? It is keep finding a way all the time. Okay, keep learning. Take it, even if you don't feel like you're getting what you deserve, or you're not having the best of time, or your confidence is a bit shaky. Find a way. Keep finding a way to get better and to learn. And I guarantee that the game in this country will give you opportunities if you just keep persisting through that. So yeah.
So, yeah, I've read recently about Angel Di Maria, who's a professional player for Argentina, scored in the World Cup finals, scored in all the most important finals, and he was told for many years he was too small right? And he would never make it as a pro because of his size. I'm sure some of our kids have probably already had experiences with this. Am I big enough? Am I strong enough? Or, I just can't get this movement right. I can't learn this skill. And I'm watching other players that are beating me in the sprints, beating me in the suicides. They have a better technical skills. Um, how much weight do you put on those things at the youth level? Um, Jamesy.
Yeah, well, it's so easy to compare yourself to other people. And this is something that I'm even going through at the level I'm playing at 27. It's so easy to compare yourself to other people. But if you strip it back, it's only about making yourself better. It's you versus you every day. And if we can get the kiddos, on this call and in this youth club to realize that this is a journey of progress. This is all about progress. It's not about who's winning the most games, who's getting ranked the highest. Oh, we've gone unbeaten for a season. Yeah, but have you got better? Have you got better? Have you developed your game? Are you mentally stronger than where you were at the start of this year? Are you technically better? Are you fitter? Because if we go with that mindset, we can make every kid in this youth club better, whether they're the top of the top, cream of the crop, or whether it's their first year in soccer. Because if we use that metric to measure what we're doing as coaches, as parents, as players, then we can get 100% success rate, because it's all about making you better, and that's why I coach. I don't coach to win, the United Cup of Championship in Hendersonville on the weekend. I coach it so that my girls and my lads that I coach can get better and enjoy the game, you know. So I think if we use that as a metric, I don't think we'll be going too far wrong, honestly, Brian.
Yeah, I listened to several interviews with high level coaches who said that one of the challenges of developing footballers in America is that we care about winning way too young.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
we care about winning trophies and tournaments and championships when our kids are, you know, primary school, middle school, and really what matters is developing and growing and improving. Youth trophies don't matter. Um, Although I have all of mine proudly displayed in my mom's
yeah,
house.
and my mum has mine, and it's funny because sometimes I say these types of things to people, and they think, "Oh, well, James, he doesn't care about winning." I'm super competitive. Like, if you see me play on a Saturday, if you've come to watch me, you'll go, "Oh, blimey, that's not a guy that's worried about progress right now." No, it's because I want to win. But there is a time and a place for that, and we're in a game of winning and losing, but are there other priorities? Maybe, especially in training. We are training to make these kiddos better, to set up a platform for you to be better so that we can perform better on a Saturday, so that we can win. It kind of, it's like a domino effect. But sometimes we look at the outcome as what we need. But the problem is when you don't get the result, right, then all of this it's all wrong. And then we just change all of this to get the result. Well, how about we focus on the process and the development, and that will lead to the result. That will lead to the outcome. And I think if we get more and more people looking at the game that way, especially at a club that, I care a lot about, I think we start to really move in a different direction from a lot of different clubs and a lot of other people.
On a very practical level, you're a coach. You've been coaching for some years. Back when you were in college, you were coaching a little youth side in North Georgia. You've been coaching here with what was previously the Crush, now One Knoxville. Um, if you could think of some pieces of advice for kids, whether that's training advice or good habits, good practices, disciplines that they could work on that are important for growing in their abilities within the game, what would those be? What advice or tips do you have?
So I think the biggest technical advice I have is receiving skills, which I know a big influence of mine was obviously Coach Mark. and he always talked receiving skills, receiving skills. So that's your first touch, how you control the ball and your relationship with the ball. And I think, I can still get better at that. There's all 22 lads on my team, 23 lads can get better at that still, So I really like to tell kiddos that has to be the first point, because what happens then is, if you get into a game, you trust your first touch, you trust your ability to control the ball. So you don't then go playing kickball, and just getting rid of it and getting it off your foot. You actually think, oh, I can control this here and play it, and then you start to see a more controlled game rather than, this almost basketball type game where it's transitional and it's that kickball nonsense that I really don't like, So I think your first touch and your receiving skills can always be better. And also, a big learning arc I'm going through right now since being a pro is how big the mental side of the game is. A lot of people think that the pros they see for One Knox on a Saturday are just the best technical players, and that's why they're a professional. When in actual fact, there's so many technical players. There's players in the college system right now that are way better technically than me. All right. But how did I get this opportunity? It's probably because of the mental side. My ability to overcome adversity, my ability to keep learning, my ability to train the hardest, even on the days where I'm sore and I don't want to. So I think preaching to these kiddos about the mental side of the game and, really developing your confidence levels, your self-confidence levels, your resiliency levels. I think that's something that I've started now to try and massage into my techniques. And I think a big way that I've done that is trying to see the positives. I get a lot of kiddos that come to me with confidence issues and, I give away this pass. Yeah, but what about the 9 passes that you did that were brilliant? Oh, I crossed it and I kicked out of play. Yeah, but how about that cross that got cut back and found your teammate and we got a chance from it, So really stressing how to see the positives in those negatives times, I think is a big learning area from kiddos that I've seen within the club for sure.
You mentioned earlier that you have like a motto or a maxim that you live by. Here in Tennessee, the one that we're familiar with is "I will give my all for Tennessee." There's a big sign there at Neyland Stadium that all the football players smack, when they run onto the field. We each have our own personal mottos. Never give up, right? Do you have some values or maxims that are important for you?
Yeah, so obviously I talked about it earlier. Find a way is a big one, and I've got a lot of these little kind of quotes and tidbits and little nuggets that I save on my notes page. So maybe one day I'll have to send it out to some of the kiddos that I'm coaching and stuff, because there's loads of them. But I like find a way. I like show up as well, because you never know when someone just needs you to show up and just needs you to be there. So they're 2 big ones that I really like. And then a value of mine that I've learned since being in Knoxville actually is you never know how much a tiny bit of positive energy can change someone's world, right? So we turn up to these training sessions and sometimes these kiddos might have had the worst day at training, at school. They might be having the roughest week. They might not be playing very well. And a tiny bit of positive energy can just realign them and get them back on that right track. And this isn't only kiddos as well. This can happen with adults in everyday life, with boys in my team. If you see someone's having a tough time, can you flash them a smile? Can you say, look, I love your attitude. I love what you're doing. Because sometimes that's such a little thing for me. That takes no energy, to be genuine and give someone a shred of positive energy. But that can absolutely change someone's world. So I've learned the power of that and how a fist bump here or there or a smile or a little bit of encouragement can really put people back on track. And that's something that I will take throughout my career, whichever way it decides to go.
Okay, so now we've got one question that was submitted by one of our listeners, and then we've got a couple more quick ones for you, Jamesy, before we hand it back over to Sam. We want to get everybody out of here before 9 p.m.
Yeah,
whenever.
get me
So
into bed for sure.
get to bed, get your sleep, get so how can a kid build their self-confidence and enjoy playing at the same time?
Oh, what a great question. So I think the enjoyment comes first, right? Because if you're enjoying the game, I guarantee you're getting better, right? And I've had a lot of kids in my experience that have come to me and said, yeah, they're not really enjoying it. They didn't get on with the coach last year. Um, they didn't play as much as they wanted to. And one thing I want to say is, you know, why are you playing this game if you're not enjoying it? Not no one should be forcing you to play this game. So how do we find that enjoyment first? That's the thing, and maybe it's leaning into your teammates. Maybe it's a change of environment. Maybe it's a change of position. Maybe it's sometimes just letting go of some of the stress and not taking things as seriously. Um, so you find that enjoyment, and from there, your self confidence grows. Self confidence is a big one, and it's something that even I've struggled with this year as a 27-year-old playing the game. There are some weeks where I'm just like, man, I'm not in gear. Like you're not doing well enough. You're not trying hard enough. You're letting people just run over you in games. And one of the things that's really, really helped me this year, along with reading some more books, is the realization that the game of football is imperfect and it always will be. And probably, although I haven't had loads of life experience, the game of life is pretty imperfect as well. Now, I don't say that to take my hands off and just say, well, we'll just let it be. No, it's the realization that when things go wrong, sometimes there's not a lot you can do about it. I'm 27. I've played for 20 plus years. I've never had a perfect game of football, and I probably never will do. So if I've got 20, let's say 21 years of evidence and I'm at a 0% perfection rate, how can I expect myself to be perfect now? And I think a lot of these kiddos that I see expect themselves to be perfect. What I care more about is what I say to some of my teams is I don't care about the mistakes. I care about the reaction to the mistakes. Okay. So if you give the ball away, are you, oh, I'm so bad. Oh, I'm not good enough. Or are you like, let me get the ball back. Let me get it back and let me have another go. Oh, I lost it again. Let me get the ball back. Let me have another go, because that is a type of characteristic that you can take into life that you can learn through the game of soccer. And that's ultimately what I want to do. I want to help develop people through this game. So if I can give them that mindset of, I'm going to make a mistake, but if I make a mistake, I'm going to make up for it. Oh, these kiddos will be in a great place. So that would
And
kind of be some advice I've got on that part.
well, and like you said, it applies way beyond football. As you were talking, I was thinking about one of my former players when I was coaching at Emerald Forest. Her name is Zoe, and I remember we played a tournament in Gatlinburg, and we had a tough game. We lost, and she was like beating herself up. And I ran into her mom at the gas station heading back into Knoxville, and she was like, I was like, Zoe had a great game. Like she really played really well. It wasn't because of her that we lost. It just happens that way. And she was like, thank you so much, because she's beating herself up in the car and yada yada. And she was a great player. She played for me a little bit longer. Now fast forward several years, and she got her master's degree from UT last year in marketing, and now has a big girl job in Nashville. And I wrote a recommendation for her and everything. It's just like, wow, look at how that, and you see, in her attitude and her spirit, how soccer helped her to succeed beyond the pitch. So I love that you said that, Jamesy. Now, closely related to self-confidence, we've all done embarrassing things on the field before. I think everybody here on this call has probably, gone to kick a ball one time and it's just gone off the wrong part of their foot and gone backwards. There's a very famous clip of the U.S. men's national team goalie, Matt Turner, when he was in college, jumping up in the air and missing a ball as a goalie and getting scored against. What's the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you on the field, and how did you recover?
Um, well, I've got loads, and I'm not afraid of the fact that I've got loads because I'm a very imperfect player and I'm a bit scrappy. The one that sticks out in my mind is when we played Tormentor away when we were USL 2. So we played Tormentor 2 and we traveled down. It's like a 7.5, 8 hour bus ride. It's minging. It's horrible. We travel down the night before. We sleep in the hotel. We get to the game, and it's like storming before the game, but we're able to kick off. So there's like standing water on the pitch. Anyway, we start playing the game. I'm having a stinker. Like I'm not getting my touch. Nothing's going right. And the second half comes right at the start of the second half, and I make this great run down the right, and the ball gets played in behind. And I check my shoulder, and I see Benny Montero, Portuguese lad. He's in the 6 yard box. And I'm like, if I slap this across, we've scored here. And we went 2-0 down in the game. It was horrible. I was like, this can get us back in the game anyway. So I've looked down, I've kicked the ball with my left foot and swung with my right and fallen straight over, right? So I'm on the ground, I'm looking up, I've had a stinker. And honestly, there's one fan in this whole stadium. And he's right in front of me, big bearded guy. And I look up like this from the ground and he just starts laughing at me. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get over this? Anyway, I claw myself up, right? About 5 minutes later, the gaffer pulls me off the field, gives me a high five, gives me that kind of sympathetic look like, yeah, it's not gone your way. And we're still 2-0 down at this point. Anyway, we go on and score 3 goals in the last half hour. We win 3-2. And I've maybe had the worst game of football in the US. And it didn't matter because the boys were buzzing, right? And I was in there buzzing as well. And their lads after the game are like, you were rubbish tonight. And they said it in a different way. But they were like, you were rubbish and you're supposed to be the captain. I'm like, lads, we've just beaten you 3-2 and you were 2-0 up on an 8-hour bus ride. And the bus ride home, I'm not kidding, I'll remember it for the rest of my life. We played cards with all 18 of the lads. And we stayed up until like 5 a.m. It was fantastic. And it was one of my fondest memories, maybe the fondest memory I had of that summer after the worst performance I've had maybe in the US. But yeah, the one fan laughing at me while I was on the ground was it was pretty embarrassing, Brian.
I've been there. Oftentimes it's been my own dad doing it too, so that makes it worse.
Yeah.
Okay, last two. You probably noticed here in America we love our orange slices at the soccer field, and we all know we gotta hydrate. Drinking water is important. Do you have any snacks, whether it's a guilty pleasure snack or just something that you like to have before a game, before a training session that just hits the spot?
Yeah, so we obviously train early in the morning. So I have a bagel before training, which is, pretty straightforward. But on away games, we have roommates. And my roommate is Sivert Haugli, who is 6'5", big Norwegian fella. Love him to bits. He's a great lad. And every away game, we will have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then we'll have a nap. Now, we don't nap together. He naps in that bed and I nap in that bed. But we have a PB&J and then we go for an hour nap together. And that's kind of our snack before a game. And then we have a pre-game meal and then we're away. But that's like our little kind of pre-game routine together. We'll have a PB&J, little chat. We'll have a nap. And then we're golden.
I love that. Because you don't have PB&Js in the UK, right? You have peanut butter, you have jam.
I hadn't had it until I was at New Hampshire. So even in Young Harris, I was there for 3 years. I'd never had a PB&J, but you used to get a free PB&J before training. Maybe that's where it comes from. And I used to go to the little shed and the lady would give me a PB&J. And the first time I had it, I was like, what's this? And all the American boys are like, yeah, it's just like standard stuff. And I was like, this is amazing. This is great.
Amen. I love it.
Now I have a PB&J before every game with my Norwegian friend.
Yes. Okay. And we encourage reading among our groups, and there's been some great inspirational books written by athletes, by non-athletes. Do you have any books or literature, anything that you have been inspired by that you would recommend to somebody who just needs that encouragement or is looking for some mentorship and some guidance?
Good question. So I'm reading a book right now that was actually recommended to me by Nick, who's a coach with One Knox. He does the 2012 GA team, I believe. And it's called Intensity. It's by a guy called Pep Linders, who was the assistant coach at Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp. And it's incredible because obviously the Premier League season for those top teams is they play about 60 games, Champions League, Premier League, and then 2 domestic cup competitions. And he talks about the intensity of their team and how they maintain that throughout a very unforgiving, English football season. So I'm reading that at the moment. I'm absolutely loving it. I've got 2 books here that I really like. This one's called The Inner Game of Tennis. You see it? And this is a good one for like self-doubt. I cannot play tennis for the life of me. So the tennis bit, I just kind of skip it. But it talks a lot about self-doubt, how you talk to yourself. Talks a lot about like judgment of your own actions within sport. And I would definitely recommend this to anyone who's kind of thinking about how to develop their own self-confidence. And it's helped me pretty immeasurably this year. And then this is also a good one that I read this year called Super Communicators. Okay. And it talks about, as it says, communication, how to connect with people. The biggest premise from there is when you talk to people and they need help, do they need a hug? Do they need help? Or do they just need to be heard? Right. And if you can go through your life with that in your mind, okay, do they need a hug? Do they need to be heard? Or do they need to be helped? Then you won't go far wrong. So Super Communicators, The Inner Game of Tennis, and then the book I'm reading right now, which is Intensity by Pep Linders. I'm loving them.
I love that. And that kind of summarizes you as a footballer because I remember before you would, before when Knoxville ever played, you described yourself as like, I kind of love that Knoxville calls itself scruffy because that's how, I'm a scrappy. And you mentioned how some people say it's a beautiful game and you're like, it's a horrible game. You go in there and you just brutalize yourself. Right. But that intensity has always been there with you, Jamesy. Those are all the questions that I had for you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm going to pass it back before we sign out to Sam Weisbrod, Executive Director for the One Knox Collective, to lead us out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamesy and Brian. That was great. So many good tidbits there for the kids. I just want to say a special thank you to New York Life, our presenting sponsor for this series, for making it possible. The local team has actually been tremendous to work with. It's a big company, national company, but the local team they put an adult rec team into our Wednesday night league. They've been so much fun. They're big soccer fans. And so if you guys have any needs related to life insurance, financial planning, etc., please reach out to them. Thank you guys for tuning in. What an awesome first show to kick this off. And we cannot wait to see you on the next one. We'll get the recording sent out to everybody so you can share with your teammates and friends. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, Sam. Cheers, guys.
See you all.